All right, it's 2 o'clock Eastern time, so we're just about ready to start. And we're going to start this webinar in a unique, unusual way with some motivating, inspiring theme music. Now, I wanted to use theme from Star Wars or Indiana Jones or something like that, but of course, being copyright protected, no can do. So I was left with a site that offers free, copyright-free theme music for educational purposes. It's not going to exactly make you want to run a marathon or anything, but we'll see how it goes. So we're about to start here, so stand by. So welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm Pete Wolf. I am the Sue in Jacksonville, Florida. I'd like to start off by thanking the team of subject matter experts who came together in a very motivating fashion to put this together in seemingly record time, available ahead of the next severe weather season. The names of those team members are shown here below. I'd like to also thank our leadership at STI for their support for this training initiative. So this webinar will only be about 30 or 40 minutes, and in it, we're going to investigate the value of MEA, how it fits within our priority of operations, how it relates to other areas of our severe weather program. We'll look at the good and the bad of MEA and why this training is important for success. I'm going to talk about the multifaceted role of the SUE in forecaster completion of this. This is not a course where the SUE's role is only to monitor completion, and that's it. The SUE has a much more important role, and I'll get to that. And then I'll talk about course design, how the course evolved, and the details of course structure and how you can access it through the CLC. I want to start about MEA itself. It's not a new thing in operations. It's been around for a long time. I've dealt with MEA in operations and in forecaster training my entire 23 years as a SUE. Those who are around in this organization in the 90s and early 2000s likely remember the wind profiler demonstration network in the central US and development of the Oklahoma Mesonet. These were key initial tools for MEA early on for severe weather forecasting. Recently, MEA interest has really picked up, likely due to a lot of new stuff available for MEA in operations, a lot of new tools and technologies, such as the advanced GOES satellite we have, advances in radar such as dual pole, greater coverage of surface observations, webcams, and so forth. Much improved numerical weather prediction tools compared to 15 or 20 years ago, including high resolution cams, rapid refresh models, and short range ensembles. We have mesoscale data analyses tools such as the SPC meso-analysis page and lapse analyses, and tools that can combine radar with other data sets such as environment information, including MRMS, the SIMS Prob Severe tool, and the AWIPS NSEA tool. In terms of the WFO priority of operations, it's always been warnings at the top. That above everything else, warnings are most important. And then I think it's followed by aviation forecasts and so forth. And that's still true today. I would argue, however, in terms of, or from the perspective of the value of information we provide for the mission to get people to take appropriate action, that in today's world of IDSS focus, that IDSS threat messaging may be taking the top spot over warnings. Warnings remain numero uno with regard to the alert feature for those who have weather radio and if they lose power and so forth. But in terms of messaging the threat with greater specificity and timeliness, there are tools with IDSS that provide us better opportunities than what we can communicate in a warning text product. And that's why the MEA course is really focused on this. It's focused on targeted threat messaging to support greater detail, greater specificity, and greater timeliness. I want to show an example of a recent warning. This was from our last Christmas Eve, a squall line that we had. You see anything wrong with the text product? It all seems to be in order, set up right. This is for the larger polygon around the Jacksonville metro area. It's a large polygon, but we have a large thread area with a squall line coming in. Hard to see any problems with this until you look at, for example, the social media graphic, which kind of shows better definition of the area covered by the polygon. And WarrenGen has always had a problem with irregularly shaped counties. And here's a good irregularly shaped one, Charlton County in Georgia, if you can see my cursor, in southern Georgia. The polygon essentially covers the far eastern part of the county. Of course, WarrenGen only defines that as eastern Charlton County. And if you're in Folkston, the main town in that county, which is in eastern Charlton County, you may think you're in the polygon, when in fact, for this polygon, you're not included. Look at the further down, on the bottom part of this image. This is St. Johns County. The northern half of the county, from about St. Augustine northward, is in the polygon. Yet WarrenGen defines the entire county as being in the polygon. And adjacent to that is Putnam County. We see the extreme northern part of the county is in it. For whatever reason, WarrenGen defines it as the northwestern part of Putnam County. I'm not sure why. The other problem you can see are the towns that are included within the warning. On the social media graphic, the towns with the white ovals are on the graphic, yet not in the text product. Meanwhile, the towns with the black ovals in the text product are not on the social media graphic. Even significant towns such as Orange Park, excuse me, close to where I live in northeastern Clay County, is not on the social media graphic. This is an example where we have many more towns on the social media graphic than we have in the text product. Whereas in this warning, it's opposite. We have more towns in the text product than on the graphics. There seems to be no rhyme or reason to this. I'm not sure. The point being, however, is that in today's world, the text product probably is not the best vehicle we have for communicating more specific downscale threat information. That we have tools with IDSS that may be far better, especially in partnership with local media. So here's an example earlier on in that event on Christmas Eve. This is one of our IDSS graphics in Twitter. And you see in yellow the warning polygon, and we have the radar scope reflectivity providing some credibility to the warning. We see a bad line of storms moving in. Does this graphic, does this message, is it an upscaled version, upscaled of information, or downscaled compared to the warning polygon? In this example, we upscaled to kind of look at the big picture, the entire line of storms affecting the western half of the forecast area. And the message at the top is fairly generic information about the entire line of storms. Not that this is a bad thing. It's good to have a display kind of the big picture of what's going on and what's expected. The MEA course, however, is going to focus on downscaling the message, targeting the threat down to the county or even sub-county level to provide greater detail, greater specificity, and greater timeliness. So here's an example of that squall line a little later in time on the right. And we're looking at 0.5 reflectivity. Warnings exist along the entire line, but there are preferred areas along the line that favor damaging winds, where we have very tight leading reflectivity gradients and cores above them that suggest the greater pressure perturbations that could drive severe level winds. And I'm showing 4 of those areas now with the white polygons. These are the areas, preferential areas for potential severe weather. Elsewhere around the line, the threat is much less. So we can use IDSS to target the threat down to these levels. Now, of course, instead of one large polygon area to message, I'm dealing with 4 areas. So obviously it takes more work to do, and it may require prioritization. In this case, I might prioritize where we have populations, which in this case are Jessup to the north and Lake City to the south, both of which had damaging winds from those line segments. The other 2 in the middle are in the middle of nowhere. We didn't get a report. That doesn't mean necessarily that there weren't damaging winds with those segments. It's just in the middle of nowhere. But again, so the focus here is on downscaling to where the threat is and where it's expected over the next 10 or 20 minutes or whatever, as opposed to a more generic message for the overall line. So back to this graphic. We have today, again, both the warnings particularly for the alert feature of them, and the IDSS threat messaging for communication of the warnings through partners and to the public. There's something missing, however, for really a top-notch program, for a program that exceeds the minimum requirements or emission. And that is, of course, the science side, MEA. It's great to have a good source of communication, but it's not helpful if you don't have good information to communicate. Likewise, It doesn't matter how good your science is if you don't have a good method to communicate that information, and or have good warnings based on science to communicate. So these three areas work together in a top-notch program to provide the best information available. The problem is that the Weather Service really only requires this. In terms of meeting our mission, these are the two real requirements: providing warnings and then communicating those warnings. That meets the mission, even with a very short or no lead time. That meets the mission. The science side is not required right now, but it is the side where we focus on better service than just the minimum. If we want to advance the information that we provide, the lead time, the accuracy, the specificity, that is focused on the science. In terms of training for WFO forecasters, for warnings, we obviously have the RAC and WAC courses. For IDSS messaging, we have the new IDSS course. But what about for mesoscale analysis? There is no thorough formal course on mesoscale analysis. There are parts of some of the material within some of the CLC modules of the WAC course, but not a full treatment of mesoscale analysis and operations. And that's the training gap that the MEA course aims to fill. Let me mention a second about the value of MEA in high impact operations. And this is the focus of the introductory module of the course. If you think about what the value of it is in operations, you're likely going to turn immediately to improving products and services. And that is true. It's been demonstrated for decades that accurate and timely MEA, incorporating that with radar and spotter reports and so forth, can lead to the best, most timely results. And our focus here is on improved communication of threats through targeted threat messaging. And our focus is not just on improving that in the warning period, but also in what I call the sub-watch period, the 1 to 3 hour lead time period, focused on how an event's going to evolve with time, what's going to happen beyond the warning period. So that's good. Yes, that definitely is an important value of MEA, but I think there's another value that is more personal in nature for forecasters, and that deals with greater job satisfaction, which comes from achieving what is hard, not what is easy. I can train anyone to recognize certain signatures on radar and issue products for those. When you see this signature, issue this product. It's basically a reactive approach with not a lot of science. The radar is essentially the science. It's reasonably easy to do, but it doesn't offer a lot of satisfaction. What is more satisfying is utilizing science to try to be more proactive, to anticipate what's going to happen, to anticipate what the radar is going to show before it shows its hand, to provide that kind of information ahead of the event so people are better prepared well ahead of time. That is what achieves satisfaction, whether you're anticipating a mesoscale winter storm event, a small-scale flood event, a surprise tornado in an otherwise unfavorable environment. Incredibly satisfying as a scientist to be able to do that in a proactive manner. And that's the goal of this course. Unfortunately, there is not all that's good with MEA. MEA offers significant reward, but it comes with significant risk. That's a fact of life. You've heard the phrase, no risk, no reward. They work hand in hand. In radar-only operations in severe weather, you can make efforts to try and be cute with decision-making, to try to improve your scores, to reduce false alarms and so forth, reduce polygon size, to increase the reward. But you do that at the cost of a substantially increased risk of a missed event. And it's happened before. I've certainly seen it, where you end up missing something as a result of being too cute with warnings. Likewise, if you try to minimize risk, you issue warnings for everything that turns red on radar because you don't want to miss anything. That comes at the cost of minimizing reward. I've said from the beginning of polygon warnings that if you have an event, all you have to do, if you want perfect verification, you just have to issue a single warning for your entire CWA for 4 to 5 hours. And I guarantee you perfect results. But the result is not going to be meaningful to anybody. So you've killed any reward from that as well, and any source of satisfaction. Our goal in this course, through this course, and through MEA in operations, is to try to increase reward as much as we can while managing, not minimizing, but appropriately managing risk. And how do we manage risk? Through training, through experience building, and in operations themselves, through recognizing uncertainty and responding to that, and understanding possible consequences that can occur. My warning criteria for a storm over downtown Jacksonville is considerably lower than a storm in the middle of the swamp where there's no people. That's part of trying to manage risk, understanding uncertainty and the possibility of consequences if something were to happen. So that's the goal of it. So MEA is both rewarding and risky. If you do it right and completely, and you maintain a solid environmental situational awareness, you can achieve substantial operational gains and the satisfaction from that. Again, it's been demonstrated many times in the past. I've been fortunate in my career to enjoy the satisfaction that comes from that. But you do it wrong or incompletely, you incorporate MEA with other tasks such that you lose environment situational awareness, and you actually can achieve worse results than if you didn't utilize MEA at all. For example, the squall line, Christmas Eve squall line I just showed you, for that event, I worked as the remote mesoanalyst. I could easily have misled the team away from warning decisions. It was an environment where the SPC mesoanalysis page showed 0 CAPE, surface or elevated, 0 CAPE, strong dynamics, strong shear, but no instability whatsoever. All the cams showed a weakening line moving across our area. So I could have led our team to focus on sub-severe winds, maybe statements for 40 to 50 mile per hour winds rather than warnings. I did not do that. And the reason I did not do that was because the information on the SPC mesoanalysis page for that event was incorrect. The dew points were too low for whatever reason, too much focus on the RAP, I'm not sure. The dew points in reality were higher, and as a result, we had several hundred joules of CAPE. Not a lot, but potentially enough to maintain an existing severe squall line. That with the shear, with the dynamics, led me to focus on storm structures that suggested these pressure perturbations that led to preferred areas for damaging winds along the line. So instead of a result where we had missed events resulting, we ended up with a result where all events were warned. There was a reasonable false alarm rate of about 0.5 and an average lead time of 15 to 20 minutes, a really good end result. But again, I point out that the risk was there, that someone who did not know what they were doing, did not QC the data and so forth, could have led the team the wrong way. So there is risk from not getting full training and experience. Here's a more recent example. This happened just last weekend. We had a supercell go across our southern counties. This is 0.5 degree reflectivity and SRM. You're looking at about 6,000 feet above the ground. And you can see the rotational signature on the right image. It was intensifying. It was about 30 to 35 knots of rotation here. And you see it moving towards the town of Crescent City. From this information alone, this far away from the radar, what do? Using no other information, I would assume that the obvious choice is to issue a tornado warning, which is what our staff did. However, incorporating near-storm environment data correctly, as well as some of the storm structure issues that I'll show you, might lead to a different end result. So here is the near-storm environment sounding from the RAP. Incorporating, looking at the observational data, it looked fairly reasonable. Temperatures and dew points were in the upper 50s. It was well north of a warm front. So we had a strong inversion, about 900 millibars. Plenty of more than sufficient CAPE aloft with nearly 1,000 joules with a steep lapse rate aloft. And if you look at the hodograph, a large cyclonic hodograph, the SRH was 540, which is a little scary, but it wasn't real because the inflow layer was up at and above the inversion. So if you look at the hodograph to the right of the yellow line here, we're looking at that part of the shear above the inversion. Still plentiful shear. It oriented in more of a straight line hodograph configuration here, but the SRH in the effective inflow layer here was actually still about 200, still supportive of mid-level mesocyclones. But it's interesting, it looks a little more straight line hodograph for the most part, a little bit of cyclonic curvature down low, relatively speaking. And if we look at the, go back and look at the, go back to the radar image, if you look closely, you can kind of pick out a bit of a mirror image that's anticyclonically curved here that tilts toward the northwest, and a little bit of a weak anticyclonic rotation in the SRM, reflecting more of a straight line hodograph type environment that the storm is actually experiencing. So again, MEA is both rewarding and risky. This training is important because of the risk, the importance of having people who are well trained to understand how to complete this process. As a result, it's an advanced level effort. It's a lot of work. And it may not be for all forecasters. So as a result, for me personally, my own personal preference, I don't really want required completion of all forecasters. This was not an intention to be a formal national course that all forecasters would be required to complete. I don't think there's value in that. I think there's less value in having everyone trained at a lower level that could lead to mistakes than compared to having a subset of staff trained at an expert level who will provide better support to the team. What I really want is motivated learning, with you, the SUs, being the motivators. Mesoanalysis and operations I have found to be more fun, more rewarding, more satisfying even than radar operations, because I can better use science to anticipate and provide better information ahead of the radar. Base decisions on science, not on fear or on gut instinct. It may be you have 2 or 3 or 4 forecasters at an average WFO who are really interested in this, and that's okay. Motivate them, excite them about what is possible through MEA and operations. So I'm going to turn now to the course itself. It began in a different form back in early 2020 as a 2-day roadshow that, due to the pandemic, obviously became a virtual roadshow. It was provided as a demonstration to a subset of Southern region, mainly the Florida WFOs for the most part. It was designed and conducted by Dr. Ariel Cohen, who was the SU in Miami at the time, along with myself. It was a 16-hour course, plus 2 working lunches. So full-time for presentations and interactive case exercises. The training was well received, high praise for the course. The only concern was how overwhelming it was. A lot of material stuffed in 16 hours. And so there were 2 problems with how the course was delivered. The first was it was exhausting to provide. After about 3 iterations of that training, I think Ariel and I were both pretty exhausted, with no real plan on how we were going to deliver it to the other offices of Southern Region. And secondly, it was provided in a manner that does not support adult learning, particularly for older adults. And research on that really focuses on these factors for learning, providing information in small chunks at a time, repetition of key points, and to practice what you've learned. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. So these are key to imprinting on short-term memory, that is learning. So Ariel and I kind of looked at this and decided to create a team of subject matter experts, people who are involved in training, who've done the mesoanalysis boot camp, to work together to design a course that, to the best of our ability, would meet these needs. So again, here are the individuals who are on this team. It was a very motivated team. I've been fortunate to lead a number of teams in my career. This was the most fun one to lead. It's just from the motivation of everyone, understanding what the mission was and getting it done in very quick order. The purpose of this was to develop a quality result and make it available to the WFOs ahead of the 2021 severe storm season. We recognized this initial version was not going to be perfect. It was not going to meet all the video-related requirements. The modules were not going to be consistent from one person to another, and that was okay. We wanted to get a quality result out quickly. And other organizations like WDTD could take what we have done and develop a more formal CLC course that meets all the requirements. Though they've indicated that kind of thing generally takes a couple of years to do. Our focus is also on severe convection IDSS, although we cover all the hazards of convection. I do want to point out that much of the material in the course is applicable to other hazards, be it winter, fire weather, tropical, and so forth. The conceptual models and the data fields you look at are different, and we can certainly see other courses developed that are addendums to this course. I think Jim Ledoux at WDTD is working on a module for winter weather mesoanalysis and so forth, and that certainly can be done. But a lot of the material in this course is applicable to really to all hazards. We focused on developing not a formal national course that just has all forecasters complete and the SU has little role other than monitor completion. We wanted a training resource for the SUs to administer to the local WFOs as they see fit, adjusting as they see fit. So the SUs have a big role in this. It's all Google and YouTube based, but all accessible through the CLC. Before I get to the course itself, I just want to touch on what I think is the SU's role in forecaster completion of the course, because I think it's multifaceted. I think a key role, part of it is motivator, to encourage particularly your science-focused staff to complete the full course. Secondly is assigner and monitor, obviously. You can use the CLC course to assign and monitor completion as desired. Another part of this role that I think is important is adjuster. The SU can determine which modules to have the staff complete or not complete based on your office's needs. You can determine which provided case exercises to assign to your staff to complete. If you have a local case that's very relevant to this, assign that as well. You don't have to just use the cases provided by the course. And you can adjust how the training is completed. You could have some case exercises completed individually, Others you might have completed in a group that you lead to monitor how the group performs. And finally, equally important is your role as learning evaluator. And we've set up the final assessment and the case exercise completions as tools for you to assess forecaster learning. This is the forecaster becoming fully knowledgeable in the subject matter. I want to briefly point out that the final assessment that's provided in the course should only be done by those who complete the entire course. If you assign a subset of the course to a forecaster, you may have to develop your own assessment, maybe via a Google form that populates answers to a Google Sheet. That's easy to do. Also, the case exercises that are provided provide the exercises only. If you want to give them the solutions, when they're done with an exercise, they come to you for the solutions. And I'm going to go now to the website. Let's see here. Okay. If you go to the calendar invite, in the description part, you will find links to all of the, they're all Google slides that have the solutions to each of the exercises, and you can provide them there. But it gives you kind of the control to see how the forecaster is performed, rather than them just having to do it and complete and see the solution on their own. So I'm now going to turn to the CLC and look at my private account here to find the course. It's very simple. You just search Mesoscale analysis and you see the curriculum right here. I would advise not searching MEA because you're going to get a long listing of measure type results. So search Mesoscale analysis and that's it. And you just click on the course and open the curriculum. And that shows the whole entire course layout. I'm going to refer to this internal course webpage in a second because it lays out the course easier, so you can see it easier than trying to go through it in the CLC. And it's available for those who don't want to mess with the CLC, I suppose. There are additional materials that PDFs one can download that are additional that forecasters can utilize. We have the course vision and mission, and then the course layout. The introductory video, which focuses on the value of the course and the importance of training and how the training is laid out. The 30-minute video, that's the first official module of the course. It has an assessment at the end of it. And then we have the course laid out in 3 parts: the science assessments, the meat of the course is part 2, and then case exercises to bring it all together in part 3. At the bottom, you see the MEA final assessment. This essentially has a couple questions from each of the part 2 modules. It's a pretty thorough assessment. It has 50 multiple choice questions, so 2 points each. You need a score of 80 or higher to pass. So I'm now going to turn to actually show you how the course is laid out, the actual web page, which actually we'll call it, when you click on this link, you'll get this page here. This page was developed by one of our forecasters, Alex Booth. Just a nicer way to look at the course. It has the developer, the title of vision and mission, and here's the introductory video. If you click on the YouTube icon here, you can see it in full screen, which is better to see the images. And then we have the 3 parts of the course. So part 1 consists of 21 science assessments, 21 different topics. This section is provided simply for the forecaster's benefit, to get a sense of their knowledge level before getting into the meat of the course. So you click on any one of these. I'll click on the SQT interpretation and wait a second for it to load, and it provides the purpose of the assessment, and then it gives you question and answer slides. It's not one that's interactive. You just have to write down the answers maybe on a piece of paper. So you see a question, and then after that it has the answer, and provides training resources from the CLC that a forecaster can go to if they feel weak on a particular topic or struggle on a particular assessment. So again, that is provided simply for their benefit. Part 2 is the meat of the course. This consists of 26 modules that are divided into 3 sections. The modules average 30 to 45 minutes in length. So you do the math and you come up with about 13 to 16 hours to complete. I should mention that part 1 should take about 1 hour to complete on average. Forecasters that are newer, that need to look at more of the training resources, will take considerably longer to complete part 1. Part 2 is about 13 to 16 hours to complete. Some of the modules are very short. Unfortunately, some of them are very long, an hour or longer. For those, as a SUE, I urge you to have the forecaster complete it and take breaks as they complete these modules, particularly the photograph one. That's the most complex module, the most complex topic in the course. It involves a number of videos to look at, and there are breaking points, and forecasters should be encouraged to take breaks and not try to swallow it all at once. So these are divided into 3 sections: tools and technology, which incorporates the sounding and the SQT, the photograph, the SPC meso analysis page, satellite and radar, the cams, even new tools like the Scrum model and available online resources. Then there's operations for MEA. That focuses on conceptual models. You see, it incorporates more than just the severe hazards. We have a lightning one for IDSS as well as a flood one, as well, and then the fun pulse storm dilemma, which is always a challenge. But it has other topics such as determining probabilities, operational workflow for the mesoanalyst, and risk management and operations. And then finally, there's MEA communication, which involves internal and external communication. So how the mesoanalyst communicates with the warning team, internal communication, how the warning team, the IDSS person, communicates with partners utilizing mesoanalyst information, effective SPC collaboration, and communicating probabilities. So it's pretty thorough course. And then finally, part 3 has 8 case exercises that are provided. We might have a 9th one included fairly soon. And I've already showed you how to get the solutions to each of these exercises. They may take an hour, hour and a half each for each case, depending on how many you want to assign to your staff. Again, keeping in mind that you're going to assign a local case as well that is applicable. For my office, just as an example, I'm assigning all forecasters 5 modules. And they are in the operations section, the PDS and determining probability, and risk management in severe weather operations. And under communication, I'm assigning effective SPC collaboration, communicating probabilities, and IDSS messaging. These 5 apply to more than just mesoanalysis. They apply to other areas of severe weather as well. So I'm requiring that of all staff. The rest of the course is optional for my staff. However, those who want to take on the mesoanalyst role in operations must, or I should use the official word shall complete the entire course before taking on this role, and not just a part of the course. This deals with risk management. Not being fully trained, it's like having someone not fully trained in radar and having them go on radar and do warning operations. It's really important to be fully trained on the subject as part of an appropriate risk management strategy. It's a long course, about 15 to 20 hours to complete. My perspective is those individuals who are really motivated in this topic, who really want to excel, are going to get this course done by the end of March. I already know several who are already halfway done with the course. It will be done by them ahead of severe weather season. Those who are less interested, it will probably take longer to get them to complete the training. But so our goal was to try and get it out as much ahead of time as possible. We did have a brief review period for the course. We had several SUs and one WCM who focused on the communication side to provide our feedback that was incorporated into the course as best we could. And I believe that is what I have. I'm going to go back now to look at, see if there are any questions or comments that are included in the chat message. Please provide your through chat as best you can. So at the moment, we have no questions or comments. And I automatically assume that it means it was the best webinar you've ever attended. So if not, offer some comments or questions that you have. So I want to pause for a moment. I'm not sure exactly how the raise your hand feature. I think I can look here and see if someone's raised their hand. I don't see anyone just yet, but I'll pause here if you have any questions or comments on this. So I have one from Jeremy. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I had just a quick question. I have about 4 students just finishing up RAC here this spring. Do you think it'd be worthwhile to let them go into this right after that, or is this stuff should they have a little bit of a break between going through all the radar application course stuff and then going right to mesoanalysis? To
me personally, I think it depends how motivated these individuals are. If they're really interested in this type of a role in operations, I don't see why they can't dive into the course if that's something that interests them. I wouldn't necessarily, require them to get it done now if they're not really that interested. But if they are, I don't see a problem letting them jump in.
Okay, thanks.
Jonathan Howell, what do you got?
Hey, Pete. Thanks again. Great presentation. I'm really glad you guys put this together. In the case studies there, I know locally I've done a case and had my staff run through focused on mesoanalysis throughout the case. Is there a way that we can add to the reservoir? Because I'd like to see my neighbors' cases as well if they come up with something that could be useful in my specific area along the Gulf Coast.
You might have to, you kind of faded out there. I couldn't hear the latter part of your question. Sorry.
Okay, I was just wondering if you have like is there a way to add to that reservoir of cases? And if so, because I've got a case that I could share with neighboring offices, and I'd like to, utilize some cases maybe that they input into the database for the case examples. I was just wondering, is there a format? What's the process to go about doing that?
Those courses, I think we're welcome to have additional ones if you have ones that are especially applicable to large areas of the country. They're all Google slides for the presentations, and then a Google slide deck with the solutions. And you can kind of go through some of the examples and just see how they're generally formatted. And I would just maybe reach out to me, and I can see about how we can add it. If you have a really good course you think that applies to a good chunk of the country, we probably could add that. If it's mostly applicable, say, to the Gulf Coast, that one you just might assign locally.
Okay, thanks, Pete.
Ariel?
Pete, do you mind if I address a couple of the questions from Southern Region? Greg Patrick asked a really good question, and I'm really glad that you asked that, Greg. How do we measure the success of MEA? In other words, when we look a couple years down the road from now, what are we going to use to determine how successful this program is? And I think that a big part of that answer comes down to our service delivery. Are we able to provide on a consistent, repeatable, reproducible basis much more targeted decision support services? Are we, there's going to be a lot of scenarios where we're identifying a possible threat with a highly conditional environment and nothing happens. But in the cases when we do have something high impact that occurs in a low predictability type environment, are our partners responding with information that suggests that heads up notification that allowed them to take the necessary steps in order to result in weather readiness? Are those effective? Are those helpful? Were lives saved? So there's certainly an opportunity to really evaluate not only the impact in terms of warning measurements, in terms of addressing false alarm rates versus POD, some of the more standard metrics, but really performing surveys amongst our partners. Is this change in information delivery, in its cadence of delivery, the tempo effectively, and as well as the type of information allowing them to make decisions at a point scale, an individual decision maker scale that enable life and property protection. And so we're going to be able to see effectively, just as an organization, if our communication of information is a lot more targeted, if we're giving a lot more heads up notice of impending, potentially low predictability, high impact events. Those are things that we'll be able to evaluate from a more of a subjective type of measurement. And there are going to be a lot of subjective measures here, and I think that's definitely a challenge. But really the question is, have we helped our partners, our core partners out? And there's going to be opportunities to really be able to gauge that as the training is the foundation for that service delivery. Greg, I know I may have rambled a bit there, so I want to make sure, just want to make sure I addressed that.
Thank you. There's another one you wanted to address?
Yeah, it looked like he said thank you, so I'll presume that's that's affirmative. Just kind of going up the list because there are a few. Pablo, do you want to?
I just wanted to, in response to that Greg email, I when Ariel came here, so not too long ago, it's this is one of the things that we talked about. This is an office that has had a revolving door with the changing staffing, and when you have almost half of your forecasting staff basically being new MEAs that are developing operationally, I always thought that this is a training that was very lacking. When Pete and Ariel did this last year, the workshops, they were truly grueling. But correct me if I'm wrong, Ariel, I think most of the MEAs here did it with you guys, including me. I did it with a younger MEAs that we had, and they beat me in the exercises, by the way. But we did it, and I found it incredibly refreshing, the class. And although with time remains to be seen in terms of numbers, I know nowadays everything is about numbers, Greg. But I can tell you this is one of the things that I look for as an MIC, as a manager. When there is active weather on the potential of having impact for weather, am I seeing the staff in the chat engaging in that mesoscale discussion. And I've seen a dramatic change in that regard. Okay, where the staff is talking about these things and looking at this and looking at that, sharing with each other, and looking at what sort of social media posts akin to what Pete showed earlier. Are we seeing something getting put out? Am I seeing they reaching out to the ENs with a quick email brief update? Those are signs. Those are signs that what they're learning here, they are sort of absorbing, assimilating it, and turning it into service. So to me internally, those are the things that I'm looking to see, and eventually over the longer term, as the roots grow, so to speak, hopefully I will hope it starts showing up in terms of whatever objective metrics we might have. But in any case, I just thought I shared those thoughts.
Thank you, Pablo. I just want to mention one quick thing and to follow up that. I've seen exactly the same thing locally, that when I'm in the mesoanalyst role, the NWS chat messaging to partners is dramatically greater than events where we don't have a mesoanalyst. It's night and day. And so we can utilize that just as an example of demonstrating the difference between incorporating this information into operations and ones where you are radar only.
I want to address, very much related to what Pablo was talking about there, Mike Staudenmayer's comment. Mike, thank you very much for that thought-out question about the communications aspect of this. And I want to highlight a couple of, actually a number of modules. Jenny Pittman, the Sue at the Topeka Forecast Office, Chauncey as well, included some really great modules on actually translating all of this scientific analysis and its implications on subsequent convective behavior, initiation, morphology, and the hazard impacts of the surface and the range of predictability thereof in terms of communicating on NWS chat, through Graphicast, through much more. Do you want to go back to the slide there, Pete? Not your email. All right.
Yeah.
And to really show ways in which we can take those data and actually use that to communicate and address a number of different modes here. So the question, do you feel there's enough information here for the communication portion of the training? This is something that kind of along the lines of what Greg had mentioned in terms of how effective is this. We'll learn more. Now, Pablo brought up some great examples at the Miami office with a direct application of this, and we're seeing this through the Mesoanalyst Boot Camp in terms of discussions with EM partners about the types of communications that can come out of the mesoanalysis. But there's a lot of information that is able to be communicated. We'll learn more about how effective it is based on surveys and post-event analyses after action reports. But this certainly lays out an at least initial foundation to be able to address direct case study to service delivery enhancements. So Mike, if there's some more things you want me to address, that would be great, but I think that this is certainly, lays a foundation where SUs can be working with, or other subject matter experts within the office staffing structure to work to build the type of communications delivery that we've addressed here. Let's see.
Ariel, I'll address Felix's question.
Sure.
That was before. So essentially, I would define the Part 1 science assessments as related to what you can get in the walk, because a lot of those training resources within those go to the CLC modules that are utilized in the walk. A lot of the Part 2 and Part 3 goes beyond what the walk provides. So that's kind of how the MEA course fits in as far as the structure is concerned. It's best probably they have the walk done first. I don't know if it's necessarily critical that it has to be done first. I think it all can go hand in hand. I do want to also address, I think there was one other person with a hand up. Aaron, did you have a question?
See, Aaron provided a link, I believe, in the chat.
Yeah, well, kind of a question and a comment. I must have kind of spaced out for a second. You mentioned the solutions slides for the exercises. Where are those again?
So I'll show you. So if you go to the calendar invite for this webinar and just look under the description part, and then I see here, I've gotten the links. They're all Google slides with the solutions for each one.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy.
And again, that was done on purpose. I want the students to be involved and not just say, okay, here's the, have them just look at the answers and they're done. I want that students to be involved and seeing how the student performed and what was learned from it, what could have been learned from it. And so it was done in that manner.
Yep, spot on. The other comment I have is it's great to see this. I mean, I think too often offices have looked at mesoanalysis, something that sounded nice, but they really didn't emphasize it. Yet, as we continue to almost downscale in terms of what our MetWatch even looks like, it's nice to be able to see this and this connection, especially to the storm scale. Obviously, I'm heavily involved with that with the Central Region TWIP, but there's always been this missing gap of saying, well, part of what happens with storm morphology is on the mesoscale. It doesn't explain everything. Obviously, there's plenty of research showing, two events in exactly identical environments with different outcomes, but you can still get a somewhat narrowed view of what's going to happen off of this mesoanalysis. And so it's nice to see that. And especially, I love the information in there. It says this has to be emphasized as a separate desk, so to speak. I think that's very easy from a scheduling perspective to try to say, well, we're just going to handle it with who's here. But that's not how this is done effectively. So I really appreciate that. I just wanted to mention that.
And Aaron, those are some great points. So I want to mention in terms of two environments that look exactly the same and get different outcomes. And certainly the big part of this is to really dig into the details. I'm really glad you brought that up, to see how, microscopically we can analyze the situation to anticipate those differences in similar looking environments. Certainly convective internal dynamics, et cetera, play a role, but how is the subtle differences in the environment supporting that? And also, I want to link what you mentioned, Aaron, and kind of address both Brian Kearns and Donald Harrigan's questions here at the same time in terms of how do we have that dedicated mesoanalysis support and the ideas in terms of really motivating this concept within the office culture in terms of having that continuous flow of information supported by very, very committed observation, science, analysis to service enhancements is going to be very important. And becoming, certainly with the pandemic, we've been able to leverage a lot of remote type support, both within our office, potentially outside of our office, depending on the constructs they're in. And so, there's a lot of flexibility and nimbleness we've been able to gain in terms of being able to get that science infusion into the service delivery enhancement. And really, in terms of selling to the management team, identifying what we're capable of doing within the purview of the National Weather Service's mission by being able to give a lot more relevant, actionable information and how that can really serve our partners within our mission. And then Donald asked the question, how do we manage the dynamic between the scenario where you have one individual who has gained this expertise and say a radar operator who has not necessarily had this background? And that's a really good question, and certainly a big part of the, if you want to say, baseline of the MEA course here for individuals who do complete the entire set is to be able to communicate that information at a level that can positively affect the warning decision-making process in order to allow the, if you want to say, decision-making to be positively influenced. Let's say, for instance, a mesoanalyst is looking at a hodograph based on the VWP that's evolved into a nice, well-defined S-shaped hodograph and is able to identify that initial convective evolution in that environment is going to support cell splitting and not necessarily fully enhancing both components of the split. Then that mesoanalyst, rather than explaining every step, and there's no time in that duration to be able to say all of that and make a warning decision, say, hey, environment looks like we're going to get not just one single member favored, but both members favored, and have a little suppression. So we might not want to go as high with the hail sizes, and we might want to have a little broader polygon versus a single concavity hodograph or straight hodograph, for instance, that might support enhanced both right and left members without the suppression. Then very quick informing bits of information can be provided through that full understanding so that we're able to communicate across the different experience levels on the staff. So what I'm saying is that expertise is hopefully able to allow that fluid discussion to occur so that we have a quick, decisive types of information and form a radar operator who doesn't have all the time to be learning hodograph theory while making warning decisions, if that's already done ahead of time. So,
all right, if I could follow up as well on Brian and Donald's question. For Donald, the key word I've always focused on is trust. You've got to be able to trust who you're working with to provide you correct, solid information. And that's part of why this course is thorough, so that you know that they've completed this course. They hopefully know what they're talking about when they address storm environments. So you don't have to debate or think about it. You can just take it as if you were looking at the SPC Meso page. You're getting this information from your Meso person, and you can run with it. Secondly, Brian brings up a very good point. It's very hard to have an additional body for this, and it requires someone full-time on it. Accurate and timely mesoanalysis is like almost continuous effort in active patterns. And just like you don't want the radar person dealing with phones or other things, you don't want the meso person being distracted by other things issues as well. And we might not have staff to do it. The efforts that Central Region is making on remote mesoanalysis, I think, is very intelligent in terms of utilizing labor resource, having people who are trained outside of the active weather supporting the inundated offices that are involved in it, providing that kind of support. But you have to know who they are and be able to trust that they've done this training and know what they're talking about.
And Gene asked a follow-up question here about the ideal interaction coordination between the warning decision maker who's working radar and the mesoanalyst or the entire warning team. And the idea here is that the mesoanalyst would be able to synthesize a very wide array of data sets in a very efficient manner to be able to communicate relevant information to the individual making social media posts, for instance, the warning decision maker, the whole team, so that they have that familiarity about where the science is driving the service in the different facets within each of those individual components of the team. And so that ideal coordination is going to be founded on that fundamental data synthesis, which the MEA course is effectively giving the foundation for. And it's done through effective internal communication. Office culture plays a really big role in terms of enabling or unlocking the full potential of this type of position. And so practice, displaced real-time training, building it into the office culture is so important to being able to refine this. And every office may handle it differently, but the idea is having that communication. You know, I've talked before, you know, warning ops, so important that we're all talking, obviously making sure that we're, you know, needless distractions are not there, but we're talking, that there's a fluid conversation going on so that everyone's aware, to enhance, so that situational awareness is being infused into all parts. If there's any follow-up, Gene, just let us know. And so Brian, kind of getting right into that, Brian Kern says, you know, getting pulled in multiple ways. I think that there's a lot of opportunity that this course will hopefully lay out in terms of how this position and its capabilities can support a workflow that is much more coherent and continuous across all of the different functionalities of the forecast office. And it comes with practice, identifying the vision and really making it come to light. And I hope that I'm addressing some of that. But I think if we keep a very positive perspective, a very mission-focused vision, we're going to be able to really expand our capability of getting the word out from the entire team. Are we missing any points at all there, Pete? I'm kind of going up and down the.
And I also want to say on Brian's question, he's absolutely right. You do get pulled both ways. That's what makes the mesoanalyst a very busy role, and one that you can't incorporate other duties into. It's very busy because I'm communicating both to the IDSS person on what to communicate, you know, even beyond the warning period, as well as communicating to the warning forecaster. We're all on a, you know, group private chat, and it is hard. It's very difficult, but that is what makes it so satisfying in the end when you achieve through science better than what radar-based warnings alone can achieve. Incredibly satisfying for the forecaster. Does anyone else have any questions they wanted to ask?
Yep, Donald, definitely the office dynamics and culture are key. Let's see.
Okay. Yep. I don't see anything else. So I do want to point out that if you have questions after this webinar, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself or to Ariel. and we'll help as best as we can. It's really an exciting area of operations. One that I think, as I have seen, I think you'll see a difference in terms of the level of IDSS messaging when you incorporate more than just the radar. When you incorporate environment and try to anticipate what's going to happen, you can demonstrate the improved level of service that one can provide, particularly beyond warnings, particularly in this sub-watch kind of 1 to 3 hour lead time period, an area we really haven't explored that much. We're really can gain benefit for. So if there's no other questions, I'll check one last time here. Let's see.
There's a number of great ideas that everyone's sharing here, and really appreciate this.
Yep, I appreciate the comments from everyone. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you everyone so much for joining, and we'll have one more session here a week from today. So thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Ariel.
Absolutely, thank you.